here's 4 best growth ETFs that are making people ridiculously rich, and it's not QQQ or VGT. Now, some of the most popular growth ETFs out there in the market are no-brainers like VGT, QQQM, SCHG, SMH, VUG, FTech, and so many more. It might be redundant and honestly quite boring and quite just annoying to just talk about some of the best growth ETFs that all you guys already know and love so much. Now, I do love both QQQ and even VGT because I do have nearly $18,000 invested in InvestSkill's QQQM or over 89 shares, so don't take that the wrong way. So in this video, I'm going to talk about 4 of the best growth ETFs that are very underrated and quite sleepers that are as good if not better than the QQQ or VGT, which are 2 popular ETFs offered by Invesco and Vanguard. Quick disclaimer is that with growth ETFs, I really do hope you have a high risk tolerance as well as a long time horizon of at least 10 years to invest your hard-earned money, because stocks like this can go down quite a bit. Yes, shocking, they are very volatile. Try to always have a diversified portfolio and honestly, always do your own research. So let's get started. The first ETF is SPMO, Invesco S&P 500 Momentum ETF. SPMO receives a 5-star Morningstar rating in the large growth category, so you know it's a very high quality fund and one of the best in the business. SPMO invests in the S&P 500 Momentum Index, and this index invests in S&P 500 stocks, of course, shocker, and it also has stocks that have a high momentum score. Momentum is the rate of acceleration of a stock's price and can be a very lucrative strategy from SPMO's momentum name to capitalize on a stock's rising trend. SPMO has an expense ratio of 0.13%, which receives an A rating by Seeking Alpha. The current dividend yield of SPMO is around 0.47%, with some of its top holdings being Amazon, Nvidia, Eli Lilly, Meta Platforms, Berkshire Hathaway, and Broadcom. SPMO is more diversified than usual growth ETFs, with some of the top sectors being in financials, information technology, consumer discretionary, healthcare, and industrials. And Seeking Alpha takes into account a fund's performance compared to other ETFs in that same category. So with this ETF, SPMO receives an impressive perfect rating of an A+ by Seeking Alpha. SPMO has returned over 18% annually over the last 5 years and over 50% in the past year from its momentum strategy. Both are just absolutely insane. In the last year, it has crushed the QQQ, VGT, and VU ETFs and has even done so over the last 3 years, all while trailing the big growth names over the last 5 years. I'd say that SPMO is more for investors looking to diversify away from a pure technology-focused ETF and to capture the highest returns in the next potential bull market. The second ETF is XOK, the Technology Select Sector SPDR Fund. I really do feel like XOK is a very underrated growth ETF, and nobody's really talking about how great this fund is, hence why it's on this list. XOK is basically the technology sector of the S&P 500, so if you basically want exposure to all sorts of technology names, from technology hardware, storage, and software, to semiconductors and information technology services, then this might be the ETF for you. XOK has been made available to investors since December 16th, 1998, so it has quite a long track history of performance, which is always a very nice thing to see. It has an expense ratio of 0.09%, which receives an A rating by Seeking Alpha. The current dividend yield of XOK sits at around 0.6 to 0.7%. with some of its top holdings being Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Broadcom, Oracle, and Salesforce. The momentum score for XOK is a B rating, but the more meaningful score is going to be the 5-year average returns, so in this case with XOK, it does receive an A+ rating, much more accurate. XOK has averaged a return of over 20% over the last decade and over 23% over the last 5 years. And I expect the performance of this ETF to continue well into the future because of the earnings per share growth of the stocks it holds in this fund of over 15%. XOK has absolutely crushed all these ETFs with its high outperformance and amazing returns. XOK is 100% a great fund if you do love technology stocks and want some exposure to some of the highest quality tech names in this space. Now, if you guys want to see my over $120,000 ETF portfolio, as well as whenever I buy any type of ETF like the S&P 500 VU or even growth ETFs, go ahead and download the Blossom app. The link is in the description of this video. I will give you a personal follow back, so go ahead and follow me on Blossom to follow all my buys as well as my portfolio, and I would love to see yours. ETF number 3 is XOXX iShares Semiconductor ETF. The most popular semiconductor ETF is without a doubt SMH by VanEck, but XOXX is a great competitor. XOXX has been awarded a 5-star Morningstar rating with a silver medal by Morningstar, so it can definitely compete with some of the best semiconductor funds in the entire world. The goal of XOXX is to invest in semiconductor stocks based out of the USA that can benefit from the rise of AI and digital disruption. SOX has been available since 2001, which means you have over 20 years of data to back up the fund's performance. It has an expense ratio of 0.35%, which receives a B rating by Seeking Alpha. The current dividend yield of XOXX sits at around 0.6%, which is actually higher than most ETFs in its own category. Some of its top holdings include Broadcom, AMD, Nvidia, Texas Instruments, Qualcomm, and Intel. SOX is broken down into two main categories, the first being into semiconductor stocks, followed by semiconductor equipment. The momentum score for SOX is a B rating, but like I said before, the more meaningful score is going to be that 5-year return, and even for this fund, the 3 years is also really strong, which receives an A+ rating, much more accurate like I said before. SOX has averaged a return of over 25% over the last decade and over 30% over the last 5 years, which is absolutely insane, and semiconductors is definitely a very high risk yet very high reward type play in your portfolio. And over the last 5 and 10 years, SOX has been an absolute dominant force against the QQQ, VGT, and VU with some insane growth, and of course some of the best returns in the stock market. XOXX is without a doubt one of the best ETFs to consider to capture the potential upside of this new wave of semiconductor stocks and artificial intelligence. The fourth ETF on our list is IYW, iShares US Technology ETF. Just like the ETFs before, which are great ones by the way, this one has been awarded a 5-star rating and a silver medal by Morningstar. The goal of IYW is to invest in an index that has US equities from the technology sector, so it's a 100% pure technology ETF. It has an expense ratio of 0.39%, which receives a B- rating by Seeking Alpha. The current dividend yield of IYW sits at around 0.2%, one of the lowest on our list and also the most expensive fund on our list, but it does make up for this in terms of its returns, but more on that later. Some of its top holdings are of course great ones like Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Meta Platforms, Broadcom, and Google. Even though it's a pure technology ETF, it does have subsectors like software and software services, semiconductors, tech hardware, and media entertainment. The momentum score for IYW is an A rating with of course an A+ for its high 5-year returns, making this fund on par or even better than a similar fund on this list, that of XLK. In the last 5 years, it has crushed the likes of the QQQ, VGT, and even VU, but over the last 10 years, VGT does come out on top over IYW's performance, but nonetheless, it is very impressive. Here are some honorable mention ETFs that couldn't quite make this list, but are also very underrated and also sleeper ETFs that have very high growth potential. If you guys like this video, please give it a like because this cute puppy did. Now right here's going to be a video on the best ETFs that aren't VU or SCHD. And right here's going to be a video on my own $100,000 ETF portfolio. Now continue to crush in the stock market and take it easy. Peace.